Taylor Jenkins was called into the Grizzlies front office this morning, not this morning, but actually 3 days ago, and was fired in person. Sources tell ESPN stunning dismissal. Jenkins now becomes one of the top head coaches or head coaching candidates for the upcoming cycle this offseason. He had a 539 winning percentage as the Grizzlies head coach. Of course, you see there it is tweeted over the Memphis Grizzlies have parted ways with head coach Taylor Jenkins. And this is where I'm talking about the experience. We should have brought this graphic up after the tweet. But as you see here, guys, on the top of the screen, the Memphis Grizzlies get rid of their head coach Taylor Jenkins. We saw the Memphis Grizzlies tonight. Franco, we kind of talked about it the other night, but we're going to get a little bit more in depth at the end of this show here tonight on that transaction as we face the Memphis Grizzlies. And this is really, you think you see everything in the NBA, but then all of a sudden you see something you've never seen before. And this is, of course, in the Grizzlies firing Taylor Jenkins. But we'll start with you, Franco. What are your thoughts on this?
It kind of, well, first off, the timeliness of this situation happening now. They're I believe, only 10 games. They were probably only 10 games away from turning around in the playoffs, let alone not just in like a play-in position, but they are within the top 6 seeding of the playoffs. It's not like they're going to be a one and done in the play-in. They're not one of those teams. The roster that they had around them is something that I have felt extremely confident in. This was a team that I thought was going to be a top contender. I would have thought that the Memphis Grizzlies would be doing just about what the Houston Rockets have been able to do this season, if not better. And I thought they were only going to be able to build around this team. Obviously, a few acquisitions were made during the trade deadline where they shipped off Marcus Smart and a few other players. I believe Jake LaRavia was another player that was sent off, and I'm
Talk about
sure
it.
I'm sure that's the thing about the Grizzlies is there's so many. It's a team that has, when this season started, I was looking at their roster all the way to the 18 with the 3 two-way players. I was like, wow, there is not a single player on this Memphis roster that I wouldn't feel comfortable playing for 20 minutes in a game. And obviously, they've had to dilute and change their operations around. And the Taylor Jenkins has been one of the more tenured coaches in the NBA, especially with how quick the turnover is for NBA coaches in the NBA at this point in the in this era. But just there must have, like we said before, and I didn't do the research before joining us again tonight. There had to be something going on behind closed doors. If there was some situation that was mishandled, if there was a goal that was intended to be reached, but no GM or owner within their right mind releases their head coach this close to a playoff series. Obviously, we've seen it in past where teams, if it happens earlier in the season, that's why I kind of was concerned about tonight's game against the Memphis Grizzlies. There's a lot of times that in recent history that we've seen teams win in spite of their coach being fired. Like the the good example, I, I think it was like ooh, oh man, I'm blanking on it, but usually teams will be able to. I'm thinking of the Boston Bruins. I'm thinking of a an NBA comparison, but
Franco, you're talking about teams who have won without their head coach, right?
yeah,
All
teams
right,
that
well, the early season representation of this was Doug Christie and the Sacramento Kings. Remember, they came into the Garden with Doug Christie, and they were on a
right.
6-7 game winning streak, and yeah,
That's who I was looking for. And, but yeah, if obviously we've seen that happen. Sometimes a coach just doesn't have the locker room, and it didn't seem like that was the case with Taylor Jenkins. It seemed like he was well respected, and obviously there just had to be something that went wrong, but that kind of concerns me for the obviously the Grizzlies have a lot of young pieces on that team, so hopefully they can bring in a coach during next offseason, but they kind of just threw away a perfectly good opportunity. Not to say that they were going to be contending for a championship or anything, but there's a very solid chance that they could have made it past the first round. But now, without a head coach and having an interim coach step in, and going into a playoff series, that just doesn't bode well for them in any standpoint. So it kind of turns them into a from a second round contender into almost a first round elimination.
I don't really have much to say on the Grizzlies firing head coach Taylor Jenkins, but one thing I do have to say is like, any playoff hopes, like, all right, I don't know what went on behind closed doors. Like, I'm not there, so I don't know. And I didn't do much research on it, but like, it shows you like how much they care about this playoff series. Like, it shows you how much they care because if they were so eager, I feel like I don't know exactly what went down. I didn't know how severe it was behind closed doors, but like, you would think if you're trying to make a playoff run, then you would like put some whatever you got aside. I don't know, like I said, don't know how extreme it is, but you put it aside for a playoff run. But it just shows you kind of like they're kind of looking past this year. I mean, you don't do that with that little left of the season. It's just a don't. You don't do that. So it's a sudden move for them, and it's like it's definitely a head scratcher. It's like one of those kind of it's nowhere near like why the Mavs traded Luka for 80. It's not like that, but it's on the borderline of that, I would say. Like we're so close to playoffs and you couldn't wait till off season to do this. Like it's definitely for sure a scratcher. And I think I feel like the Grizzlies, like they're a hard fighting team. I know you guys know that. Like when the Grizzlies are healthy and they have their full team with John Morant, Zach Edey now, Jaren Jackson Jr. You got Desmond Bain, former Celtic, right there. But when you got that team and you have Taylor Jenkins, he's been a solid head coach. I mean, you throw all of that away pretty much with firing him, especially before playoffs, and that can do a lot of impact. I don't know if he had some beef with the players or whatever, but like that could really put a toll on your players too, because I heard it during the broadcast. A lot of these players only had him as their head coach, and like that's a thing that you lose that all of a sudden. You're not used to it, and it's a big sudden change, and they could kiss their playoff hopes goodbye, or they could prove me wrong. Maybe they have some kind of Cinderella story, honestly, where they just come here and the underdogs and destroy. But ultimately, I think that move for the Grizzlies is like really a head scratcher, and it's like you couldn't wait like a few like a month till year off season
Right.
and fire him. Like
Literally a month. Literally a month.
really.
And for me, this firing is just the Grizzlies. Okay, everybody tracks the stars right at the top. Everybody's looking at where every star player is going, which star players are on what teams, and what's going on with the stars. Right? It's all about star acquisitions. Right? It's not just about the stars when it comes to winning in the NBA. Almost every team has some level of star. The bottom feeder teams, even look at the Utah Jazz. Lauri Markkanen is an all-star on the Utah Jazz's roster. And you look at all the stars out there, there are plenty of them. They are plentiful, right? But what really makes a winning squad in the NBA is all of the moves a front office makes around the margins. And for the past couple of seasons, the Memphis Grizzlies have been secretly one of the worst front offices in the entire NBA. One of the worst. Okay. I'll take you guys through this. First of all, in 21-22, they made the playoffs surprisingly as the number 2 seed in the Western Conference. They faced off against the Minnesota Timberwolves in round 1. It was the 2-7 matchup out west. Was the 2-7 matchup? I feel like it was. I feel like that was the 2-7 matchup. I want to get the seeding right here. But regardless, face off against the Minnesota Timberwolves in round 1, right? They win that series. They go into round 2. They face the Golden State Warriors. John Morant gets hurt in that series, and the Warriors take out the Grizzlies in 6 games. The Grizzlies kind of fall apart near the end of that year. The next season, the Grizzlies, they go through the Western Conference. They maintain the number 2 seed again, and then I want to say in 2022, were the Grizzlies the 3 seed? Were they the 2 seed or were they the 3 seed? I don't remember. But here's the thing, is that in 22-23, that was the Ja Morant gun situation that popped up, and that completely threw off the Grizzlies season. I mean, he was suspended on and off. You saw in the Lakers series, yep, there you go. There you go. John Morant. He was in the chat. John Morant is in the chat, folks. But that was the year in which the Grizzlies faced adversity from the standpoint of John Morant and the gun situation. And then in the first round of the NBA playoffs, they were taken out by a 7 seed in the Los Angeles Lakers. Also, just fact checking here, the Grizzlies were the number 2 seed in 2022. Surprising they were the number 2 seed all the way back in 2022. That was a real surprising Grizzlies team. Regardless, that year it looked like, oh, the Grizzlies are up next. Number 2 in the Western Conference, that year was the Grizzlies and Cavs. 21-22, it was the Grizzlies, the Cavs, and even the Celtics. I mean, the Celtics were kind of reforming themselves, right? They made it to the finals that year. They were reforming themselves from 2020, making that Eastern Conference Finals run. But the Cavs and Grizzlies, they impressed as young teams. The Grizzlies, the number 2 seed out west. They won a series against the Minnesota Timberwolves, played the Golden State Warriors, the eventual champions, in the second round, took them to 6 games. And then the next year, they attained the number 2 seed yet again. But then it starts falling off a cliff from there. 22-23 starts falling off a complete cliff. The next year, the Grizzlies, of course, go and trade for Marcus Smart. He misses most of the year last year. John Morant misses most of the year last year. And the Grizzlies, they're injured across the board, yet they still kind of overachieve within the margins of who's playing. You know, Gigi Jackson, Vince Williams. Unfortunately, Gigi Jackson's been hurt this season, but Vince Williams, we saw him out there tonight. Yet that year, last year, was just complete disaster for the Memphis Grizzlies. The Grizzlies coming to this year, they're overlooked, of course, as a team out west, and people had them even as high as the 2 seed coming into this season, going, look, this Grizzlies team is overlooked. They're going to be good again. They're not going to be the 13th seed in the West. That's just not going to happen. They're going to be above the play-in, or maybe in the play-in. Who knows? But a lot of people had them somewhere in that mid tier of the Western Conference to high tier, right? The highest tier. Well, that's exactly what the Grizzlies were able to achieve this season. They're the 5 seed right now. They were sitting in the 2 slot for a good majority of the season. 2, 3, 4, 5. They're really in that range of the Western Conference. They held the number 2 seed for quite a while. And 9 games left in the regular season, the Grizzlies fire Taylor Jenkins, their head coach. That, to me, alarm bells are just going off on number 1, incompetent organization, and number 2, something behind the scenes is not right when it comes to Taylor Jenkins
He
and his
must
ball
have.
club. He must have said something, must have had a bad relationship. Something must have been just completely over the top that we don't know about and has not been released from the public, because I'll add this in. Taylor Jenkins did not know he was getting fired. I mean, the last press conference he had, I watched the whole thing. The man had no clue. He was talking like it was a normal game, normal setting, whatever. It wasn't his finale.
You think it
Go ahead,
was
Griffin.
you think it was kind of like an Ime Udoka situation, maybe?
It has to be.
That's a little
It has to be.
extreme, but I will
Not
say,
to
like,
that
could it be
extreme,
something in that? Well, when I say extreme, he probably. I'm not going to go ahead and say Taylor Jenkins was finagling with other Grizzlies staff members, but I'll say, could something have happened where, oh, he doesn't have the greatest relationship with John Morant, doesn't have the greatest relationship with the owner? That's why I talk about, hey, Bill Chisholm, you got to have great relationships with the head coach and your
Hey,
players.
hey,
They are the ones
not
making
getting
the
on that
decisions.
topic.
But I'm saying that's why I'm talking about the owners, though.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I see with the Grizzlies. I go, it could have been something with Ja, could have been something with Jaren Jackson Jr. And I even look at Taylor Jenkins and John Moran. Go, those are 2 different personalities. Their head coach, player. Do they match up that well? Could have been a relationship with the owner, something said behind the scenes. But it screams out incompetency when a team fires a head coach 9 games away from the NBA playoffs, when you're in the 5 seed and you have the chance to go out and grab the 2 seed. Increasingly less so now, that chance becoming for the Memphis Grizzlies as the Rockets run ahead with the 2 seed. But the Grizzlies were in the running for the 2 seed. They fire their head coach with 9 games left. I mean, you're throwing away a season. You're throwing away another season.
Oh, yeah.
That's 3 straight seasons from the Memphis Grizzlies where they're throwing away their season. I mean, look, 2022, that was their first. They broke through. They made their run where they showed the world, hey, we're here. We're the Memphis Grizzlies. We're here. We're here to compete. We're not quite contenders, but we're getting up to that level. Ever since then, it's been about shifting around the margins of their roster. And I'll show this graphic here in a second what I'm talking about. Ever since then, 22-23, thrown away season because of Ja Morant's situation. The next year, the whole team's injured. Can't really do much about that. But 23-24, you're 13th in the West. And this year, you fire your head coach for the Memphis Grizzlies 9 games before the playoffs. That's 3 straight seasons since the Grizzlies showed everybody, hello, we're here out West. We're the 2 seed. We're coming to contend. 3 straight seasons of just complete and utter thrown away basketball when it comes to the end of the year by the Memphis Grizzlies. And even talking about this, look, this is from last year, okay? I brought this graphic up on a show that actually wasn't released. And see, that's why it's a little weird here, the graphic. But anyway, this is from Basketball Reference. And you see that 21 squad who made, I mean, look, you go ahead on these trying to look here, see. I feel like these might be the wrong year. I feel like they might be the wrong year. I'm not too certain. I feel like I don't know. But here's the roster comparisons. I'm not sure why I have all these highlighted and these are I got to get my facts straight here. But regardless, you have players in here that you just notice they're gone. They're gone the next year. I mean, they let Jonas Valanciunas walk. Who do they replace him with? Nobody. I mean, Xavier Tillman, Brandon Clark. Talking about those guys. I mean, you're replacing Jonas Valanciunas with them. I mean, Kyle Anderson, he's off the roster. He's gone. Dylan Brooks, gone. Grayson Allen, gone. DeAnthony Melton, gone. Tyus Jones, gone. I mean, look at all those players. All gone. All gone. I mean, you're talking about Dylan Brooks, Jonas Valanciunas, Kyle Anderson, Grayson Allen, DeAnthony Melton, Tyus Jones. All gone from the roster. All gone. You know, I can't really understand why I have these players highlighted the way they're up on here, but you kind of see the trend here with the Memphis Grizzlies just year to year with their rosters. They are lesser rosters year after year. They're just lesser. They are, and it's unfortunate for the Memphis Grizzlies. And this is what I'm talking about when it comes to around the margins in the Memphis Grizzlies. Their rosters are getting worse year after year after year. And the Memphis Grizzlies, if you are sitting there in 21-22, the 21 season was the play-in year, and then 22, they grabbed the 2 seed. Those are the 2 years they were showing everybody they were here. They were here to compete in the Western Conference. They broke through their breakout seasons, right? After that, it's just been a dwindling of talent, replacing them with nobody. And then now we're to a point where we see 3 straight seasons where the Grizzlies have just completely thrown away their chances to go and compete in the playoffs for an NBA championship and to build that experience up come playoff time. It's extremely frustrating. Just from I won't even say from a I mean, obviously, wait, where'd my hat go? Where'd my hat go? Obviously, folks, from St. Louis here, from the Lowe, right? From the Lowe, not the bathroom, but the city. Memphis is 4 hours away. You see it on the street signs everywhere. Memphis is kind of the satellite team. You know, Memphis, Indiana, Chicago, Milwaukee. Those are the satellite teams around St. Louis, right? From my perspective, I'm like, I want to see the Grizzlies do well, right? I want to see them do well. The Grizzlies cannot stop shooting themselves in the foot. This is not a good organization.
Guns down.
This is not. Yep, that's actually great. That's actually great. That's actually a great point. But the Grizzlies are an incompetent organization. They've shown it year after year. They still have Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson. They're still competing. People see that and they go, okay, Grizzlies, they're incompetent. Okay, the organization is completely incompetent. They've gotten rid of players, like I said, Grayson Allen, DeAnthony Melton, Valanciunas, Anderson, all these guys. They haven't replaced them with anybody over the years. Dylan Brooks as well. I understand why you don't give some of these guys the contracts you do, but hello, you didn't replace the talent anywhere else. Anywhere else. And now you're firing your head coach with 9 games left in the regular season. And I'll mention this. I mentioned this last post game, I think. All but 2 of the Memphis Grizzlies. So out of the whole staff last year for the Memphis Grizzlies, right? The whole coaching staff, every staff member for the Grizzlies on the coaching staff was fired last year, all but 2 of them, and the head coach in Taylor Jenkins. Well, Taylor Jenkins was just fired along with those 2 head coaches. So now, or along with those assistant coaches, those 2 assistant coaches. So now the Grizzlies, when it comes to the coaching staff in 23-24, and then now 25 or 24-25 going into the playoffs, the staff is 100% completely different. The Grizzlies only brought back 3 members from last year's coaching staff. One of them was Taylor Jenkins, being the head coach. He's fired, along with the 2 other assistant coaches that were brought back. So the Grizzlies completely new head coaching staff. But I'm just going to point this out again. The Grizzlies, I've been waiting to say this forever. They are incompetent. They're one of the teams right now in the NBA that whatever move they make, it's typically head scratching. I mean, Jake LaRavia, all right? Franco, you mentioned Jake LaRavia. Jake LaRavia, the Memphis Grizzlies declined his 4th-year option. They declined a qualifying offer to Jake LaRavia. Didn't want to extend him a qualifying offer. That would have kept Jake LaRavia on the roster at least into next season on about a $3-4 million deal. Guess what? Jake LaRavia was playing well for the Grizzlies earlier this season. He was playing well, but now, he's a free agent in the offseason because they didn't pick up his option for next year, in which if they would have just picked him up, they would have had a small salary contributing player on their roster next season. Instead, they had to trade him halfway through this season with Marcus Smart. So their 2 assets, you saw that $20 million Marcus Smart deal they had on their roster. That was legitimate salary. And Jake LaRavia, who was a legitimate young player they could have thrown into a deal with Marcus Smart with the salary as well. That would have made up about $25 million worth of salaries. Do you think the Memphis Grizzlies got anything out of those players? No. The one player we saw play tonight who the Grizzlies got out of Marcus Smart and Jake LaRavia was Marvin Bagley. Marvin Bagley, who you could have attained for a bag of circus peanuts last year. So the Memphis Grizzlies, I hate to say it, but they're one of the poorest ran clubs in the entire NBA, and it's an absolute miracle they're at the number 5 seed right now. And before too long, I think we're going to see guys like Jaren Jackson and John Morant ask on out of there, and the Grizzlies are going to be right back down there in the standings, unfortunately, because when you throw away 3 seasons like they've done, when you make some of the moves like they've made, especially this latest one in firing Taylor Jenkins, from all accounts out there, from other head coaches, executives, every player around the league, Taylor Jenkins is a phenomenal head coach. There had to have been something said behind the scenes, done something behind the scenes in order for him to be ousted from that position, because otherwise, great head coach, always had great reviews. And again, Franco, I think you mentioned it too. The grit and the grind from the Grizzlies, the grit and grind Grizzlies from 10 years ago. This team embodied that team as well, and Taylor Jenkins was a huge part of that. And now he's out the door along with all these other players in which embody that culture in Memphis as well, like guys like Dylan Brooks, guys like Kyle Anderson, guys like Grayson Allen, DeAnthony Melton, Jonas Valanciunas. They didn't replace any of those players. They didn't get value out of any of those players. And now they just had one of the best head coaches in the NBA. They get rid of him too. This Grizzlies organization, they're way worse than people think out there. They're way, way worse when it comes to competency, running an organization. And that's, again, why I talk about the Celtics ownership the way I do, because you got to have good ownership in these situations. And I'm not certain the Grizzlies do. I'm just not.